Hello and welcome to the final instalment in a series of quickfire shows on Scotland's Euro 2020 adventure, produced by DC Thomson Media. Today we're licking our wounds following Scotland's exit from the European Championship after last night's 3-1 Hampden loss to Croatia. That left Steve Clarke's team with just a single Group D point and one goal from their three matches. As always, this chat will be helmed by me, Ryan Cryle, from the Press and Journal.
And me, Sean Hamilton, from the Courier, while again we are joined by two of Scottish football's biggest names.
Yes, we've gone full circle, and joining us to reflect on the game and Scotland's time at the Euros in general will be the same pairing who helped us kick off with so much optimism 2 weeks ago. Firstly, we have an Aberdeen and Scotland legend, once called the world's greatest penalty box defender. It is, of course, Willie Miller. How are you, Willie?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. All consideration taken into account.
And we're also joined by broadcaster, journalist, podcaster and columnist extraordinaire, Jim Spence. How are you this morning, Jim?
Well, snap for what Willie said there, Can I just add that my old man, who's been dead 20 odd years now, gave up on Scottish football when Willie retired. He thought he was the last great defender, and how we could have done with him last night. There you are, Willem.
So we've sort of hinted at it already, but we're 12 hours on. Scotland are out the Euros. Are we feeling pride that they were there in the first place? Are we feeling disappointment that they maybe didn't show their best self across the three games, or a mixture of both?
Yeah, probably a mixture of both. I think, getting back into a major tournament, the Euros was a huge boost, particularly. We've got two games at home in this section. I believe we've got another game as well that we won't be involved in. But at the same time, it would have been torture if we weren't involved. So I think in terms of actually, making it to the finals, I think that gives you pride, although the route to the finals was a bit convoluted and a bit close and a bit nerve-wracking. But at the same time, the important thing is that you actually get there. Once you're there, of course, then the big challenge is to try and qualify out the group. And, we simply didn't do that. There was a lot of optimism, particularly after the England game. But you look at the first game's against the Czech Republic. That was classed as the easiest game in the group. And we always seem to do this. We always seem to give ourselves a mountain to climb. So you get beaten that game, you then need an outstanding display, which it was, against England, and then you go in against Croatia, who, to be honest, hadn't played at all in the first two games. I mean, even the players are admitting that last night. And then they turn on the magic, they turn on the heat, and we just simply weren't at the races. We were well beaten last night. I mean, I don't think you could put up a case for saying anything other than that. We didn't bring the A game, we didn't bring the Wembley performance to Hampden. And Croatia found their form, and we went out.
I mean, is it as simple as Scotland being outclassed by a superior opponent last night, or are there things that maybe you would take issue with in terms of maybe the selection or the performance that Scotland turned in?
Well, I think there's a combination of things. I think we were undoubtedly outplayed. We were outplayed by a team who, I suspect, man for man was superior. We certainly had nobody in the class of a Perisic or a Modric. Much was made of Modric's age at 35. I'm kind of fed up hearing this stuff. I mean, really good pros now can, avoiding injury and all the rest of it, can go on to 37, 38, 39 we've seen in some cases, and sometimes older. So, we had no one in that class. We had no one in the class of several of those players. They've got them. Croatia had a movement and a grace and an elegance about them, and a quickness of thought and a quickness of touch that we struggle to manage it. I don't think you can criticise the effort of the players. That's the last thing you should ever be able to do with professional football, and you should always expect full 100% effort. But I think there are things that at that level don't work. I'm not convinced that. I like two up top. I mean, we talked about this other week when Willie did suggest that Stevie was probably not a negative manager, but more defensive, like to hit in the counter-attack. I think that's probably true. But so two up top looks as though you've set it with quite an attacking formation. But the two that we paired together, I think, frankly, although again you can't fault them for effort, Dykes and Adams, I don't think have the quality you require to play at that level in terms of kind of bringing other people into the game, reading the game, dropping off to pick balls up, linking up well enough. And to be frank, in Dykes' case, just probably kind of the general touch and game intelligence required at that level. Now it might well be that he learns it. He's got a fair bit to go, but I don't think that worked. I kind of find it concerning that although I was keen on seeing seeing Gilmour in, that we were so concerned that a young guy that has hardly ever played was to be a kind of central part of our misfortune on the night because he wasn't there. So I think there are quite a lot of things. I think defensively we could have done better. I mean, the opening goal, for instance, the amount of time that was given to Vlasic, to kill the ball in his midriff from the knockdown. 4 players were round about him at one stage, still got the shot away. The Modric goal reminded me, was it Kubia, Willie, who scored against us for Peru with the outside of the boot? That kind of... I mean, I said last night on Twitter, a generation of Scottish coaches would have knocked that sort of nonsense out of him in two minutes flat, outside of the boot stuff. Who wants that, So I just think generally, and then at the third goal, we kind of easily jumped, nobody on the posts, things like that. I think there were a lot of things that we can be unhappy about. Some things we can be happy about, the general effort and all-round kind of commitment, and the fact that Stevie Clarke has a squad that seem to be, playing for each other, seem to be determined to foster a great relationship within the squad. But we do lack quality. There's no getting away from that. And, what we need to do, basically, and we're not going to do it between now and try to qualify for the World Cup, is we need to actually produce players like the Modric's of this world. But we've been trying to do that, I think, now for the last 30 odd years or more, and we've fallen short. So some bits to be happy about, quite a lot of things to be unhappy about. And I think the main thing to be unhappy about is that I think much of the early confidence that we kind of gathered going into this tournament, because we were quite confident, I think, just seems to have dissipated. It seems to have gone. Good result against England, great fighting performance, which you would have expected against our oldest rivals. But we've lost 2 games on our home turf. Normally, I know one of them was an away game, but we've lost 2 games on our home turf at Hampden to a country, to Croatia, a population of 4 million who've been World Cup finalists, semi-finalists in the World Cup, and twice in the last in the quarter-finals, the European Championships. We've got to find how we can replicate that. And as I say, we've been trying to do it for a long time. So, now that the thrill of the chase has gone, I think there's a lot of hard thinking to do, and we keep hearing about learning lessons. I just wonder when, A, what the lessons are, and B, when we will learn them.
Do you think, obviously, Jim, there you've talked about the fact that we're quite passive at points in the game last night. I've seen people on Twitter, good cop out for me. I've seen people on Twitter say that perhaps the England game took so much out of us. It was a really emotional game, and it was a really high quality performance where Scotland had to be at it the whole 90 minutes. Is that something we can blame, or we were talking before we came on, Willie, about the fact that we had so many chances. When you look at the stats of other teams across the tournament so far, we've had as many chances as loads of those teams, but we've only scored 1 goal. Are those the things that we really need to be blaming for this?
Well, how many goals have we lost though? Is it 6? Yeah, it's 3, isn't it? 3-1.
Yeah.
No, 3-0. It was
5.
0-0. So it's 5. So you've lost 5 goals. So it's okay saying that you've created chances, missed chances. You lost 5 goals. You can wind it back. I don't know. Over the years when I've watched Scotland over the last 23 years trying to qualify, the games that we're expected to win, we just simply, there's always one that we drop. There's always one where there's a defeat or a draw that puts us, in a poor position to qualify. And it's the same in this tournament. We were expecting to at least take something from the first game against the Czech Republic. We didn't do that, and right away that puts you on the back foot. And then what you have to do is you have to galvanise yourself, and then you have to produce a performance. And by the way, I don't think England are that great. I don't think that we should get carried away with the fact that if you look at the 3 teams that I've watched, England, Croatia on the performance against us are looking the best out of the three that have qualified. You know, Czech Republic and England are looking about the same, to be honest. You might even, tip Czech Republic before England. So I don't think we should get carried away. I thought it was a magnificent performance against a team, an okay England team. It did take a lot of energy out of you, but at the same time, you needed that performance. Otherwise, the tournament was gone completely from us. So we got that performance. I think it's a weak excuse to say that we were tired on the back of that. We got ourselves into a situation where we needed a huge performance against England. We got it. If we'd have done the business in the first game, taking the 3 points in the first game, we'd have qualified. It's as simple as that. We didn't do it. We're then looking at Croatia, and I was as optimistic as everyone else because I watched Croatia play against England. I watched them play against the Czech Republic, and they weren't very good. They did not come anywhere near the standard that they produced last night. So that gave us hope and optimism that if they played the same way, we might get a result. If we played the same way as we did it against England, we could get a result. Neither happened. Croatia were brilliant, and we were nowhere near. We were a shadow of the performance that we showed against the English. The Croatian midfield totally dominated us almost from start to finish. The energy was lacking. We played with, you talk about a back three, a back five. It was a back five we played against Croatia, and we've still lost 3 goals. So I think you've got to be hugely disappointed with the fact that you've managed to manoeuvre yourself into a position where there is a possibility of qualification and we don't perform on the night. And I think that was a disappointing aspect of it. We're nowhere near as good as what we can be.
Jim, I mean, Willie's just touched on the midfield last night. And I mean, how important do you think, first of all, Billy Gilmour was to that midfield performance against England that was so good? And how much of an impact do you think his absence had on the performance last night? Because I mean, if we're looking for plus points, I think we could agree that Billy Gilmour's probably the big plus point from this tournament, because the performance against England was excellent, and certainly if he can replicate that for Scotland going forward, then that gives the midfield a real boost, doesn't it?
I think what Billy Gilmour brings to the party is he brings a craft and a guile and a general intelligence that lots of midfielders lack. I mean, I don't think, we have something similar to him, playing in that kind of role that can join things up. He sees passes where others don't more quickly. He brings people into the game, lovely gives and goes. He's got a generally very quick football brain and quick football feet as well. And we don't have too many of those. I mean, I think the thing is, when we compare playing to England, I'm kind of Willie's camping this with the English thing. I think perhaps we have, and I know I was probably guilty of it as well, overrating that England side. I mean, man for man, they look great. When you see them on paper, on the pitch, they didn't look that good. I think that Croatia side last night playing like that would have beaten England, I think, had they played like that against them. But what they have, and people like Modric, is that kind of general craft and gracefulness, and just that very quick mind on the ball. And great. I mean, I'm not for a minute saying Gilmour is a Modric yet, but he brings that kind of that intelligence to his football, and he sees things very quickly. And I think in that respect, it might well have made a big difference. But one man doesn't make a team. Although I do remember Dundee United collapsed when they sold Billy Dodds to Aberdeen, but that's another thing entirely. I mean, I just think we need to produce more Gilmour type players rather than some of the players we've been producing. But that's a long term thing now. Been trying to do it for a long time. I wouldn't place our defeat last night on the shoulders of the absence of Gilmour. It would have been great to have had him there, but I don't know if we'd have beaten a Croatia side who had that much talent and depth against the limited talent that we had.
So the optimists among us may say that this is a sort of game changer, the fact we qualified for Euro 2020, regardless of how it's gone, that we've kind of overcome that hurdle, that 23-year hurdle, and we can maybe qualify for all the tournaments going forward. We want more moments like Callum McGregor's goal going in. I know I described that as the best moment of my life at one point last night. I think I regret that now. But how do you guys feel going forward? The squad it's still young, as a lot of people have pointed out. I don't think there's going to be anyone aging out really in the next, maybe for the next couple of tournaments. Do you think we can get to the World Cup next year? Do you think we can get to the next Euros?
Well, I think as far as qualification is concerned, it's in the history of football, it's the easiest it has ever been to qualify for the World Cup and Euros, with the UEFA system of qualification now. I mean, you take the Euros, for instance. I never played in the Euros. Why did I never play in the Euros? There was only 8 teams in the final. It went to 16 and then we started, qualifying. It went to 24, and surely on 24 we should be qualifying. I think that would be depressing if we didn't regularly qualify for the Euros. And I think slightly lesser with the World Cup. I think the World Cup is, marginally more difficult to qualify from. So the qualification campaign should be looked upon as very positive. I think there is every chance that we certainly should be looking forward to the Euros in years to come, and possibly the World Cup as well. I think the performances have been good recently. I think it gives us hope and optimism under Steve Clarke that we can qualify for major tournaments. We wouldn't want anything like the time gap, between our last qualification and this one. So the optimism is there. I think the squad is pretty strong. I think, Billy Gilmour coming in, Patterson as well, looked impressive in the short period he had. And I think all round generally it's young enough to look forward with optimism. So I think qualification should be on the horizon. I think once you get there, though, it's difficult. I mean, I've been there myself. It's difficult to qualify out of these groups. You're playing against top quality teams, even teams that we reckon, are maybe weaker than us, and teams that we should beat, which there aren't really many of them, to be honest. But in a group of 4, you're looking at one. That one was the Czech Republic. We didn't take that opportunity, on the back foot, having to recover. And I think that's a learning process for Steve Clarke and the players, is that if you're in a group with a team that you should be beating, then you've got to be beating them, because the hope and optimism of turning in a magnificent performance in 2 occasions against England and Croatia was a tall ask. They did it in the game at Wembley, but unfortunately, the game at Hampden, they were well short of that.
Just briefly, Jim, finally, I mean, speaking about World Cup qualifiers coming up, there's 3 big games coming up in September. They would be the next ones, and it's pretty tricky. It's away to Denmark first, then at home to Moldova, and then away to Austria. So away to Denmark, away to Austria in September. Those are 2 tough games. Given the 2 draws that we've had from the first 3 games, at home Austria and Israel as well, how I mean, these games look make or break, really. They could be, couldn't they?
Well, I'd like to see. I mean, I think my one criticism, if you want, is I think we're still too negative. I'd like to see the Nisbets and the Frasers, people like that, people with a bit of pace, bit of zip, bit of go about them. I'd like to see us being a wee bit more positive. I mean, I understand that, the way Stevie likes to play, kind of soak it up in defence and kind of hit and counter-attack and all the rest of it. I'd like us to be a wee bit more positive. I mean, I think, there were periods last night, for a small period anyway, where we knocked it about quite well. We knocked it about a wee bit of tempo. And I actually always think Scottish teams play better that way, when we kind of play with a bit of zip and a bit of tempo, a bit of southern kind of try and knock it about in that slow, what you almost used to call the continental side style. Because I think we struggle to go through the gears quickly, the way European sides and other sides seem to manage. I don't know if it's a mental thing or not, but I'd like to see, a bit more positivity in terms of the way we set it out. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how we look on this. We've come at this group having, 1 point from 9. We've lost 2 and we've drawn 1 against the old enemy, a game which we were always going to be up for anyhow. So to me, I would really like to see a much more positive and frankly an attacking mindset. And I'm not talking about going gung-ho, but I think a wee bit more attack-minded and creatively minded than we've shown so far.
Okay, well, I think that's us for this series of videos on Scotland's Euros campaign. Hopefully Willie and Jim will be able to join us.
Short and sharp like our campaign.
Hopefully be able to join us in 23 years, the next time we do one of these little mini series. But yeah, Thank you, guys. Much appreciated. And thanks to you for watching.
Good stuff.
Right, cheers, boys.
Good night.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Will.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Right, folks, thanks for that.